Okay, welcome to the Theories of Design presentation. I'm sort of flying by the seat of my pants today because I wasn't going to be recording it, but I am. So first of all, I was going to take us through an acknowledgement of country. I'm presenting on the lands of the Wadawurrung people. I'd like to respectfully acknowledge them as the traditional owners of the land and acknowledge their ancestors and elders past, present and emerging who have taught their children and adults on this land. I wish to thank them for allowing us to continue doing so through our work as educators. The Gordon is an inclusive workplace and welcomes people of any age, sex, culture, religion, gender, sexuality, and ability. Now, why are we talking about philosophy and its relationship to the built environment? So when we talk about theories in design, this is what we're talking about, how philosophy has affected the built environment. Philosophy influences built environment because it shapes the underlying principles and values that guide architectural design and urban planning. Here are some of the key reasons why philosophy plays a crucial role in the built environment. Because of its conceptual framework. So philosophy provides a conceptual framework for understanding space, form, and function. It helps architects and designers and planners articulate their vision and approach to design. An example of this is in modernism, which we'll look at later. And you'll see here, wherever there's a word highlighted in yellow, this is where a word refers to also a movement in architecture. So conceptual frameworks have helped the movement of modernism, emphasis on rationalism and functionalism, which led to the development of sleek, efficient buildings that prioritise utility and simplicity. Some of the key philosophers in this area have been Immanuel Kant, Michel Foucault, Pierre Bourdieu. Ethical considerations are philosophical theories that often address ethical questions about how we should live, what constitutes a good life, and how to balance individual needs with those of the community. These considerations directly impact design decisions, and some of the key philosophers have been Aristotle, Friedrich Nietzsche, and Jean-Paul Sartre. There's also Peter Singer, who's an Australian philosopher. Sustainable architecture is driven by ethical concerns about environmental responsibility, for instance, and long-term impact of buildings on the planet. There's a little artwork here that is the way art has sort of started to deal with ethical considerations. This piece of art is called the 25 centimetre line of tattooed on 6 paid people. There's cultural expressionism. So architecture is a form of cultural expression, and philosophy has helped interpret and articulated cultural values, beliefs, and identities through the built environment. Theodore Adorno, Edward Said, Roland Barthes, and Judith Butler are some of the key philosophers around cultural expressionism. And critical realism is a style of architecture or a movement in architecture that emphasises local culture and context, resisting the homogenising effect of global architectural styles. An artistic example of cultural realism can be seen in something like Wassily Kandinsky's Yellow, Red and Blue painting. So you can see that these philosophies affect the built environment, art, architecture, everything. Right, the next one is human experience. Philosophy delves into the nature of human experience, perception and interaction with space. It helps designers to create environments that resonate with human emotions and behaviours. Phenomenology is a form of philosophy that has appeared to influence architecture a lot, and it focuses on the sensory and experiential aspects of space, aiming to create environments that feel meaningful and connected to their users. Some of the key philosophers are René Descartes, Simone de Beauvoir, and Jean-Paul Sartre. So you can see Jean-Paul Sartre has appeared in a couple of different philosophies, because philosophers don't just delve into the understanding of one sort of experience or idea. They'll often look at many different concepts. And you can see an example from the art world. This work called Princess is a phenomenological kind of exploration of selfhood against these philosophies. Right? So innovation and creativity, philosophical inquiry often challenges conventional wisdom and encourages new ways of thinking. This fosters innovation and creativity in architectural design. Some of the key philosophers here would be Gilles Deleuze, Michel Foucault, Arthur Schopenhauer, George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel. And deconstructivism becomes one of the architectural expressions of innovation, philosophical innovation and creativity, primarily influenced by Derrida's philosophies, which break away from traditional forms and structures, leading to innovative and often unconventional architectural designs. And you can see here is an example of an image created by Frank Gehry for the Lou Rouveau Centre for brain health. Sorry, there's all this noise behind me now. But we will see the actual building that came out of this sort of thinking when we look at architectural styles moving forward. Then there's also social and political contexts. So philosophy engages with social and political issues, influencing how space is designed to address power, dynamics, inclusivity, and social justice. So new urbanism is one of the styles of architecture that seeks to create a more equitable and community-oriented urban spaces, responding to philosophical ideas about what a good society is and communal living. Some of the key philosophers here would be Plato and Aristotle, so very, very ancient philosophers. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Karl Marx, Max Weber, Hannah Arendt. And you can actually see a lot of social and political philosophy explored in quite ancient architecture as well. So the Colosseum, for instance, would have explored social and political contexts in its design thinking as well. Aesthetic theory, so this philosophy provides insights into aesthetics, guiding principles of beauty, proportion, harmony, etc. in architectural design. An example here might be minimalism as an example, grass-rooted in the philosophy of simplicity and essence, leads to design that focuses on purity of form and material. But you can also see aesthetic theory would have been relevant when in the arts and crafts movement, for instance, and the Art Deco period. Some of the key philosophers here are Jean-Francois Lyotard, Theodore Adorno, and Maurice, now I don't know his name, Merleau-Ponty. And then functional and practical considerations. So philosophical approaches to functionality and practicality influence how spaces are designed to meet the needs of their users effectively. Examples of this, again, is modernism, which prioritizes functionality, resulting in buildings that are designed for efficiency and ease of use. Some of the key philosophers, again, here you'll see we've seen these names before: Immanuel Kant, Jürgen Habermas, Michel Foucault, Henry David Thoreau. Interdisciplinary influences. So philosophy often intersects with other disciplines. As we can see here, we've been talking about how philosophy intersects with architecture, but here is the sort of general idea of this, such as art, science, technology, enriching the architectural discourse. And discourse here means the way we talk about things and the way things look, and expanding and possibilities for design. Phenomenology is the study of structures and consciousness and experience, focusing on how phenomena appears to individuals and uncovering the essence of those experiences through the methods like epoch and reduction. So by this, they're talking about how do we understand what it's like as a human to use space for instance, in the world of building design, phenomenologists would be looking at what it's like for humans in multiple ways, so emotionally, physically, aesthetically. An example of this in the built environment is a movement called parametricism, which uses computational design processes influenced by contemporary philosophical ideas about complexity and emergent systems. So it might be using AI, for instance, and Revit together to be able to come up with designs that are more inclusive, for instance. Some of the key philosophers here would be Jacques Derrida, Martin Heidegger, got interrupted, Michel Foucault, Jürgen Habermas, and Edward Husserl. Right, so why, in summary, do we look at philosophy and its relationship to the built environment? In essence, philosophy provides a rich source of ideas, questions, and principles that profoundly influence the way the built environment is conceived, designed, and experienced. It helps architects and planners create spaces that are not only functional and aesthetically pleasing, but also meaningful and reflective of deeper human values and aspirations. Right, so the major philosophical theories that have influenced the built environment, we've covered some of them. We've covered the theories themselves, but let's look at the actual movements. So over the past century, various philosophical theories have significantly influenced architecture, shaping its principles, practices, and aesthetics. Here are some key philosophical movements and theories that have had a profound impact on architecture itself. So we're looking at the actual architecture that has come out of looking at these theories, so the architectural movements, which are modernism. Modernism is the architecture is heavily influenced by the philosophical principles of rationalism, functionalism, and the idea of progress. Key figures here include Le Corbusier, with his ideas around the house as a machine for living, and his 5 points of architecture, which are supports, so columns, free plans, which is open planning, free facade, you can see it's not delineated into rooms on the facade, horizontal or ribbon windows, and roof gardens. Le Corbusier's 5 points of architecture have had a profound impact on modernist architecture and emphasised the importance of functionality and the use of modern materials and the creation of new forms and spaces that departed from traditional architectural conventions. And you can see here at the Villa Savoy, which was finished in 1931, we see something quite different to what you would have seen as a residence prior to then. Another one of the major modernists is the Bauhaus and Walter Gropius. So the Bauhaus movement was founded by Walter Gropius in 1919. So you'll know, if you know your history, that's just after the First World War. And it aimed to unify art, craft, and technology. It emphasised functional design and simplicity and modern materials, so the use of concrete and steel. Key figures include Gropius and then Mies van der Rohe. The movement significantly influenced modern architecture, design and art, promoting minimalist aesthetic and mass production. When we talk about modernism or modernist architecture, it's often with a capital M, and that distinguishes it from us talking about anything that is modern with a lowercase m, which talks about anything that is current. Right, and you'll see that a lot of these modernists actually moved to the US pre the Second World War. A lot of them were Jewish and needed to get out of Europe before, well, as Hitler started to gain control. So that's why you see the Werkbund exhibition building model factory in 1914 is in, I can't remember where it is, Berlin, can't remember. But then these later buildings, you see 1938, Massachusetts, that's when Walter Gropius has moved to the US. Postmodernism emerged as a reaction against the rigid principles of modernism. So it came later, embracing complexity, contradiction, and plurality, which means multiple meanings. And some of the major architectural players here would be Charles Jenks, who was more of a philosopher but also involved in the built environment, and basically got together with a lot of very famous postmodern architects. So Zaha Hadid and Frank Gehry here are two examples to create buildings for the Maggie Cancer Centre across the US. And you can see also there is Jenks's own home in London, the eccentric cosmic house, he called it. It was originally called the thematic house. And you can see it's played around with ideas around the traditional English country home, but done it in quite an extreme way. Here is another major postmodernist, Robert Venturi, and his wife Denise Scott Brown, and they played around with this idea of meaning. So you can see in his sketch here, he's playing around with this idea of the chimney being sort of a play on itself on the facade of the house, and the entry to the house not being straight in. There's a lot of things going on in this that are actually influenced by a philosophical way of approaching the built environment. I'll just do a couple more and then you can read the rest yourselves. Then there's phenomenology. I haven't got examples here. Focuses on the human experience. If you're interested, you can look up these two people. I haven't got to finish this presentation yet. Deconstructivism. So here is that example that we looked at before, the Lou Ruvo Centre for Brain Health that Frank Gehry actually built. So you can see that's the actual built building, and his earlier sketch we saw, or not sketch, but the image that was his thought process for this. You can also look up Zaha Hadid and Peter Eisenman for other deconstructivist architects. Then there's also sustainability and modernism. You can look up these architects, Ken Yang and William McDonough. Then there's critical regionalism. So Kenneth Frampton is an example of critical regionalism, and that looks at the importance of context, place, and local culture in architectural design, often as a critique of the homogenizing effects of globalism. So by that, what it means is it's looking at what is traditional materials and ideas of built structures that are being employed in local environments, so that we're not just producing sort of large Metricon-style homes everywhere, for instance, or libraries that all look like the Colosseum. I might stop here and you can go through the rest yourselves and just read them. They'll help you complete your AT1.